What if your vegetable garden didn't panic every time summer stopped raining? When temperatures climb into the 90s, most gardeners start watering more, checking their containers twice a day, and worrying about plants wilting before dinner. But some vegetables are built for this kind of weather. They have tougher leaves, stronger root systems, or underground storage organs that help them handle heat and periods of limited water better than delicate summer crops. And here's what makes perennial vegetables even more interesting. You don't have to start over every spring. Once established, they can return year after year, giving you a reliable source of food while requiring far less work than starting an entire garden from seed every season. Today, we're counting down 7 perennial vegetables that can handle hot, dry summer conditions and still keep producing food. These aren't plants that simply tolerate difficult weather. They're crops that can become more valuable as your garden gets hotter and harder to maintain. And starting at number 7 is one of the most unusual onions you'll ever grow: Egyptian walking onion. If you've ever wished you could plant onions once and then simply let them take care of themselves, this perennial might be exactly what you're looking for. Egyptian walking onion is famous for producing clusters of tiny bulbils at the top of its flower stalk. Eventually, those heavy little bulbs bend the stalk toward the ground where they touch the soil and begin growing into new plants. That's where the name walking onion comes from. But the real advantage appears during summer. Once established, Egyptian walking onion is remarkably tough. Its narrow, upright leaves lose relatively little water compared with large, soft, leafy vegetables, while the underground bulbs give the plant a reserve it can draw on when conditions become hot and dry. That makes it much more forgiving than shallow-rooted greens that can collapse after just a day without water. According to University of Wisconsin-Madison Extension, perennial onions are hardy, low-maintenance crops that can remain productive for multiple seasons when grown in suitable conditions. For containers, use a pot at least 10 to 12 inches deep, with enough width to allow the bulbs to multiply. A larger container is even better if you want to establish a permanent colony. Egyptian walking onion performs well across a broad range of climates, with USDA zones 3 through 9 being particularly suitable. In very cold regions, protect the container during prolonged hard freezes, while gardeners in extremely hot climates should give plants some afternoon shade and avoid placing dark containers directly on scorching concrete. But there's one mistake that can completely undermine its drought tolerance: watering it constantly just because the weather is hot. Once established, the goal isn't to keep the soil permanently wet. Overwatering can encourage weak growth and root problems. Instead, allow the upper layer of soil to dry slightly between deep waterings, then water thoroughly. During extreme drought, provide supplemental water, especially for newly established plants. The reward is a vegetable that keeps giving. You can harvest the green leaves like scallions, use the underground bulbs like small onions, and even replant the bulbils to expand your supply. The bulbs and leaves provide vitamin C, antioxidants, and sulfur-containing compounds commonly associated with the onion family. And unlike annual onions that need to be replanted every year, Egyptian walking onion can keep multiplying on its own. Plant it once, give it time to establish, and eventually the onion starts doing something most vegetables can't. It starts planting itself. At number 6, tree collards. Imagine planting one leafy green and having it continue producing for years instead of weeks. That's what makes tree collards so unusual. Unlike ordinary collard greens that are grown as annual vegetables, tree collards can develop into a tall, branching perennial plant that keeps producing fresh leaves season after season. And summer is where this crop really starts to show its strength. Once established, tree collards are remarkably resilient. Their thick, leathery leaves lose moisture more slowly than delicate salad greens, while the woody stems and established root system help the plant cope with periods of heat and reduced rainfall. It won't thrive without water forever, but compared with shallow-rooted annual greens, it's far more forgiving when summer conditions become difficult. According to University of California Cooperative Extension, perennial tree-type brassicas can provide repeated harvests over multiple years and are particularly valuable in mild climates where they can remain productive for extended periods. For containers, this is one plant where bigger is definitely better. Use at least a 15-gallon container, preferably larger, because tree collards eventually become substantial plants. Give them enough vertical and horizontal space for the branches to develop, and expect to harvest from the same plant for years. They perform best in USDA zones 7 through 10. In colder regions, containers should be moved into a protected location before prolonged hard freezes, while gardeners in zones 9 and 10 should provide afternoon shade during periods of extreme summer heat. But there's one mistake that can quickly cause problems: letting the plant become too large without pruning. A mature tree collard can become tall and top-heavy, especially in a container. Regularly harvesting the lower leaves and cutting back overly long branches keeps the plant compact, encourages fresh side shoots, and reduces the amount of water the plant needs to support unnecessary growth. And that's where the reward becomes impressive. Instead of harvesting the entire plant, you simply pick the tender leaves you need. They're rich in vitamins A, C, and K, calcium, fiber, and antioxidants, and work beautifully in stir-fries, soups, wraps, and slow-cooked greens. One well-established tree collard can become a permanent vegetable factory on your patio. You don't plant it for one harvest. You plant it because it can keep feeding you for years. At number 5, New Zealand spinach. If you've ever tried growing traditional spinach through a hot summer, you already know the problem. Just when the plants begin looking productive, temperatures rise, the leaves become smaller, and suddenly the plant sends up a flower stalk. New Zealand spinach is the opposite. Despite its name, it's not actually true spinach. It's a completely different plant, and that's exactly why it's so useful during summer. While ordinary spinach prefers cool weather, New Zealand spinach thrives when temperatures rise, making it one of the best alternatives for gardeners who still want tender, spinach-like greens during the hottest months. Its thick, fleshy leaves and sprawling growth habit help it handle heat and periods of dry weather much better than conventional spinach once the plants are established. According to University of California Agriculture and Natural Resources, New Zealand spinach is a warm-season leafy vegetable that performs well during periods when traditional spinach struggles with heat and bolting. For containers, use a 10 to 15-gallon pot with enough surface area for the plant's spreading stems. It performs best in USDA zones 8 through 11, where warm weather allows it to grow for an extended season. In cooler zones, it can still be grown as a warm season annual, but protected when temperatures begin dropping. In zones 9 and above, some afternoon shade can help reduce water loss during the most intense summer heat. One thing that ruins this crop is treating it like ordinary spinach and harvesting too much at once. New Zealand spinach responds best to regular harvesting. Pinch or cut the growing tips and young leaves instead of stripping the entire plant. This encourages branching and turns a single plant into a bushier, more productive source of greens. The reward is impressive. Once established, it can provide repeated harvests throughout the summer, exactly when traditional spinach has usually disappeared from the garden. The leaves contain vitamins A and C, iron, calcium, and antioxidant compounds, and can be used almost anywhere you'd normally use spinach. Sauté it with garlic, fold it into omelets, add it to soups, or blend young leaves into green smoothies. For gardeners battling relentless summer heat, New Zealand spinach offers something traditional spinach simply can't: a reliable supply of fresh, spinach-like greens when summer refuses to cool down. At number 4, Daubenton's kale. Most kale varieties are treated as annuals. You sow them, grow them, harvest them, and eventually pull them out. Daubenton's kale plays by a completely different set of rules. This rare perennial kale can remain productive for several years, continuously producing new shoots and tender leaves without needing to be replanted every season, and that becomes especially valuable during summer. Once established, Daubenton's kale can handle periods of heat and moderate dryness better than many delicate leafy greens. Its mature root system gives it a much stronger foundation, while the thick leaves help reduce rapid moisture loss. Instead of starting from a tiny seedling every spring, you already have an established plant ready to grow when conditions become favorable. According to RHS gardening guidance, Daubenton's kale is a hardy perennial brassica that can provide repeated harvests over multiple years, making it particularly valuable for gardeners looking for reliable, low-maintenance food crops. For containers, give this plant room to become permanent. A 15-gallon container or larger is ideal, especially if you want to keep it productive for several years. Use a wide container rather than a narrow one so the plant has room to branch and produce multiple growing points. It performs best in USDA zones 7 through 10. In colder regions, protect the container from prolonged hard freezes because the roots are more exposed above ground than they would be in a garden bed. In zones 9 and 10, provide afternoon shade during periods of extreme heat to prevent unnecessary water stress. One thing that ruins this crop is harvesting only from the top. If you repeatedly strip the newest central growth, you can slow the development of side shoots and reduce the plant's overall productivity. Instead, harvest mature outer leaves and occasionally pinch growing tips to encourage the plant to branch. The goal isn't to take everything at once, it's to keep the plant growing while continuously taking what you need. The reward is a vegetable that can stay productive for years. The leaves are rich in vitamins A, C, and K, calcium, fiber, and antioxidants, and can be used exactly like ordinary kale in soups, stir-fries, wraps, or hearty stews. That's what makes Daubenton's kale so valuable. You aren't growing a seasonal crop. You're building a permanent source of greens that can keep producing through one summer after another. At number 3, Malabar Spinach. If your garden gets hotter as summer progresses, most leafy greens start asking for relief. Malabar spinach does the opposite. Give it warmth, sunlight, and something to climb, and it can turn into a vigorous wall of edible leaves when many traditional greens have already bolted or collapsed. And despite its name, Malabar spinach isn't true spinach. It's a tropical leafy vine that thrives in hot weather, making it one of the most useful greens for gardeners dealing with long, intense summers. Its thick, succulent leaves and stems are particularly well adapted to warm conditions. Once established, the plant can tolerate short periods of reduced watering far better than delicate lettuce or ordinary spinach, although consistent moisture will always produce faster growth and larger leaves. According to University of Florida IFAS Extension, Malabar spinach is a warm-season leafy vegetable that performs especially well in hot, humid conditions where traditional spinach struggles. For containers, choose a 10 to 15-gallon pot and give the plant a trellis, railing, or other vertical support. It grows aggressively, and allowing it to climb upward is much more efficient than letting the vines sprawl across the ground. Malabar spinach thrives in USDA zones 9 through 11 as a perennial, while gardeners in cooler zones can grow it as a warm season annual. In extremely hot zones 10 and 11, some afternoon shade can reduce water stress without significantly slowing growth. One thing that ruins this crop is letting the vines sprawl without harvesting them. The plant can quickly become a tangled mass, and once the vines become overly mature, the leaves may become tougher. Instead, harvest the growing tips regularly. Pinching the young shoots keeps the plant compact, encourages branching, and gives you a continuous supply of tender leaves. And the harvest can be enormous. Once established, Malabar spinach can produce fresh leaves throughout the warm season. The leaves contain vitamins A and C, iron, calcium, and antioxidant compounds, and their naturally thick texture makes them excellent for stir-fries, curries, soups, and smoothies. It's also one of the most productive vegetables for vertical container gardening. So, while traditional spinach is begging for cooler weather, Malabar spinach is climbing higher, producing more leaves and turning the summer heat into an advantage. At number 2, Jerusalem artichoke. If you're looking for a perennial vegetable that can almost disappear underground during difficult weather and come back stronger, when conditions improve, Jerusalem artichoke is hard to beat. Also known as sunchoke, this sunflower relative doesn't produce its main food above ground. Instead, it builds energy reserves in underground tubers. That makes it fundamentally different from delicate leafy vegetables that lose water rapidly through their leaves during extreme summer heat. Once established, Jerusalem artichoke can tolerate surprisingly dry conditions because its extensive root system allows the plant to search for moisture deeper in the growing medium. During a hot summer, the foliage may slow down temporarily, but the underground tubers remain protected beneath the soil. According to University of Minnesota Extension, Jerusalem artichoke is a vigorous perennial crop that produces edible tubers underground and can return year after year with relatively little maintenance once established. For containers, this is one crop where you need to think big. Use at least a 20-gallon container, preferably one that's 18 to 24 inches deep. The extra volume gives the plant enough room to develop its underground tubers without becoming severely root-bound. Jerusalem artichokes perform best in USDA zones 3 through 9. In very cold areas, the underground tubers are surprisingly resilient. But containers should still be protected from prolonged deep freezes because above-ground pots experience colder temperatures than garden soil. In zones 9 and hotter, provide afternoon shade if the container becomes excessively hot. One thing that ruins this crop is letting the container dry completely for long periods while the tubers are developing. Drought-tolerant doesn't mean drought-proof. Once established, the plant can handle dry conditions, but severe and prolonged water stress can reduce tuber size and overall yield. During extended heat waves, give the container a deep soaking, then allow the surface to dry before watering again. The reward comes later in the season, after the tall sunflower-like stems finish growing and begin to die back. The edible tubers are ready to harvest. They're rich in fiber and inulin, a type of prebiotic carbohydrate that supports beneficial gut bacteria. Their nutty, slightly sweet flavor makes them excellent, roasted, mashed, sautéed, or added to soups. And here's what makes them truly valuable for long-term food production. You don't need to harvest every tuber. Leave a few behind and they'll sprout again next year. Plant once, harvest underground, and let the crop rebuild itself. At number 1, sweet potato. This might be the most surprising vegetable on the entire list. When most people hear drought-tolerant, they think of tough herbs or desert plants. But sweet potatoes can produce an enormous amount of food while thriving through long, hot summers once their vines become established. That's because sweet potatoes are built around an underground storage system. The vines spread across the surface, capturing sunlight and converting that energy into carbohydrates that are stored below the soil as sweet, nutritious tubers. The plant's vigorous growth also gives it an advantage in hot weather. Once established, the dense foliage helps shade the soil surface, reducing evaporation and keeping the root zone cooler. That creates a useful cycle. More foliage protects the soil, protected soil loses less moisture, and the plant can continue developing even when rainfall becomes inconsistent. According to University of Georgia Cooperative Extension, sweet potatoes are warm-season crops that thrive in hot weather and are well adapted to the long growing seasons of the southern United States. For containers, choose a 15 to 20 gallon pot or grow bag, ideally at least 12 to 15 inches deep. Give the vines room to spread, or train them along a balcony railing or trellis to make better use of vertical space. Sweet potatoes perform best as true perennials in USDA zones 9 through 11. Gardeners in Zone 8 and cooler regions absolutely must grow them as an annual warm season crop, or bring the tubers inside before the soil freezes. In zones 9 and above, intense afternoon heat is usually not a problem once plants are established, but containers still need protection from becoming completely dry. One thing that ruins this crop is watering too frequently without allowing the root zone to breathe. Sweet potatoes need moisture while they're establishing, but constantly soggy soil can encourage root problems and reduce healthy tuber development. Once the vines are growing strongly, focus on deep, consistent watering rather than small amounts every day. A thick layer of mulch can also dramatically reduce evaporation during extreme summer heat. And the reward is huge. Depending on the variety and growing conditions, one container can produce multiple pounds of nutritious tubers. Sweet potatoes are rich in complex carbohydrates, fiber, beta-carotene, vitamin C, and potassium, making them one of the most valuable calorie-producing crops for a small-space garden. And you don't have to waste the vines. The young leaves and shoots can also be cooked as greens. That's why sweet potato earns the #1 spot. It doesn't just tolerate summer heat, it turns that heat into food. The real secret to surviving a brutal summer garden isn't watering more. It's choosing plants that don't need you to rescue them every single day. These 7 perennial and heat-loving vegetables show what's possible when you stop fighting your climate and start working with it. Some store energy underground, others have tougher leaves, deeper roots, or simply thrive in temperatures that make traditional vegetables struggle. And remember, drought-tolerant doesn't mean drought-proof. Every plant needs regular watering while it's becoming established. But once these crops develop strong roots, they can handle heat and short periods of dry weather far better than many conventional vegetables. That's what makes them so valuable for container gardeners. You're not just growing food for one season. You're building a garden that becomes more resilient every year. So, if summer heat and rising water demands are making your garden harder to manage, don't give up. Start with 1 or 2 of these crops, let them establish, and see how much food they can produce with less daily attention. And if you want a garden that keeps feeding you through the toughest parts of the year, don't just plant more vegetables. Plant smarter ones. If you found this video useful, subscribe for more practical container gardening strategies, and let me know in the comments, which of these 7 would you plant first?